This video is brought to you by Surfshark VPN. What's up, Wisecrack? Michael here, and today I'm gonna once again try to put a philosophy PhD to its ideal use, talking about anime. Specifically today, I'm watching Attack on Titan. Now, I'll be honest, this is not a show I'd previously seen, but some of the fellow Wisecrack staff said, Michael, we need your big galaxy brain take on this crazy show. Specifically, how it gets into philosophical arguments for why the planned extinction of your own people is a good thing. So today I'm going to take a look at some recent episodes and see if the show has anything interesting to say about whether or not we should keep having kids. So let's find out in this Philosopher Reacts to Attack on Titan Season 4. And spoilers ahead. And before I get into it, I want to give a shout out to this week's sponsor, Surfshark VPN. A VPN is a virtual private network, which sends your data through an encrypted tunnel so you're protected from online snoops. Things are opening back up, and so as you begin to venture out, you can use your VPN to protect you while you're away from home. You can safely use public Wi-Fi on your phone, browse the web from other countries, or if you're out of the country, you can even get around a bank freeze by accessing your account through your VPN. One of the best parts about having a VPN is getting around location-based services and pricing. Certain sites use your location against you to serve you higher prices for rentals. If you are visiting another city and want to book a hotel or car rental, you can circumvent this by accessing your VPN to book at the best possible price. Check out all the benefits of a VPN by going to surfshark.deals/wisecrack and use promo code Wisecrack for 83% off your plan with an extra 3 months for free. Now, back to the show. Okay, we're gonna check out a couple moments from the final 2 episodes of the first half of Season 4, starting with a flashback scene where Zeke, the ultimate parental snitch, comes up with a brilliant idea to end the suffering of his people, the Eldians, aka the subjects of Ymir, which is, well, I'll let him explain.
もしこれ以上ユミルの民が生まれてこなければ100年後にはこの世から巨人は消滅している。もう世界は巨人の脅威に怯えたり苦しめられたりせずに済む。何よりそもそも僕らは生まれてこなければ苦しまなくてよかったんだ。
Pretty heavy stuff for a game of catch. He's basically arguing that if his people had never been born, they never would have had to experience so much oppression and suffering. So naturally, if he could sterilize all of his people, they'd slowly cease to exist and could no longer pose a threat to others or be victims themselves. And this touches on a debate currently taking place in philosophy, ethics, and environmental studies, anti-natalism. Simply put, anti-natalism is the belief that procreation and bringing human lives into existence is morally wrong. So, as far as anti-natalists are concerned, your parents did something objectively unethical when they had you. To be clear, I don't think that. I think you're wonderful, so keep up the good work. Like Daniel Kaluuya said at the Oscars, I think it's amazing that your parents had sex. Now, if these people had a slogan, it would be something like, it would be better not to have been born. And while anti-natalism has gotten more attention in recent years, it traces back to ancient Greek tragedies. Sophocles wrote, "Never to have been born is best, but if we must see the light, the next best is quickly returning whence we came." If you want to write that in a card for your crush and let us know how that goes, we'd love to hear about it in the comments, so drop it right there. But for now, let's keep going. Having a family is nice. You never want to lie in a relationship.
私がエルディア人だと知った妻は自分と息子の喉を裂いて死んだ。だがこの13年間は巨人の研究に没頭し君と出会い。
I don't like when he picks up the bloody baseball. That made me feel bad, and I'm never playing catch again. So apologies to my future son for not doing that with you. But we can at least see the motivation for this plan, as simply by being born as Eldians, these people are thrown into lives of unavoidable pain and suffering. Now, this is a good point to talk about where anti-natalism gets tricky in the context of the show. For one, anti-natalists don't advocate for killing your kids. Taking the life of something is a lot different than choosing to not bring a life into this world. And as we'll see, this isn't the only messy conflation the show attaches to anti-natalist attitudes.
獣の巨人は俺が継承する。マーレのためじゃない。始祖奪還 間計画を成功させ世界を救ってみせるよ世界の人々を巨人の恐怖から解き放ちエルディア人を苦しみから解放するんだ
Well, okay then. Now, Zeke's anti-natalism is specific to his people, and this is different from contemporary anti-natalism, which is universal in its scope and applies to all of humanity. In the show, however, the belief that kids should not be born to suffer gets applied to a specific group of people, and that gets us into some pretty big yikes territory. Remember, the Marleyans want to exterminate the Eldians for regular, gross genocide reasons, but let's at least look at Zeke's idea of preventing needless suffering for his own people while acknowledging at the outset that we're still gonna be swimming in yikes territory. So David Benatar, a South African philosopher and the most notable contemporary anti-natalist, thinks sparing humans from suffering is one of the key arguments for bringing the circle of life to a hard stop. In his book, Better Never to Have Been, The Harm of Coming into Existence, he argues that while good people go to great lengths to spare their children from suffering, few of them seem to notice that the one and only guaranteed way to prevent all the suffering of their children is not to bring those children into existence in the first place. He takes the type of argument that Zeke is using to defend Eldian anti-natalism and uses it to argue that existence as such creates unnecessary suffering for humans who never asked to come into existence in the first place. It's as simple as all humans suffer. So if you have a human child, it will necessarily live a life of suffering. So why do you want to do that? Now, in Zeke's case, he wants to prevent suffering among a specific group of people. This is less Benatar's take and more what some thinkers would liken to eugenics. Anyway, now that Zeke has become a weird version of an anti-natalist, let's see how good he is at getting others on board.
エルディア人が生まれてこなければこの町の住民もこれから俺たちの計画に巻き込まれて死ぬことはなかったこの世に生まれないことこれ以上の救済はない俺はやる俺の手で巨人が支配した2000年の歴史にケリをつけるそうだろ兄さんああその通りだやろう
Okay, so that line, there's no greater salvation than not being born into this world, is pretty intense. But once again, they are talking about salvation from a very real suffering. If you've watched this show, I doubt you ever found yourself thinking, man, it would rule to be an Eldian. That seems like a super sick life.
我々にできることはこの収容区でただつつましく生きることだ
Zeke and Aaron know that the future of their race is likely to stay engaged in endless war. So if they can end it, they think they should. Because best case scenario for an Eldian, you get to live in a walled ghetto with the chance to earn a better life by contributing to the genocide of your own people. Worst case scenario, you get a shot in your spine and become a titan that eats people. So by sterilizing the Eldian people, Zeke would be, in theory at least, saving them from two options. But also, it's worth noting the difference between advocating in, say, a book that having kids is immoral and forcibly sterilizing people, which, even if you agree with the former, is ethically very, very bad. Of course, others in the show agree that forced sterilization is bad, and rather than preventing the birth of future children, they just want to kill Zeke right now.
唯一の救いエルディアの安楽死
なんつった安楽死お前はこれからくせえ巨人の口の中で自分の体が咀嚼される音を聞きながら死ぬわけだ
Why does he have to say it?
お前にしちゃ随分と安らかな死に方だろう奪った仲間たちの命に比べてみれば
奪ってない救ってやったんだそいつらから生まれてくる命をこの残酷な世界から
So let's say that hypothetically this argument might make sense in a reality where people can transform into bloodthirsty giants, but not in the real world, right? I can see where you're coming from. However, according to some or, all scientists, our planet is trending downward pretty rapidly. And whether it's rising temperatures and sea levels, an increase in catastrophic weather events, devastating droughts, and increased air pollution and toxicity, the forecast for human flourishing is not good. If they're right, we're basically doing a societal upper decker in the toilet tank of the future. I'm not saying foregoing having kids is necessarily good, but as you can see, there is some logic to these arguments. But also, when you really compare Zeke's position to actual anti-natalism, he infuses lots of other ideas that reek of fascist eugenics. Let's keep going.
子供が生まれなくなる。そうです。それがジークの安楽死計画。この世から巨人がいることで存在する苦しみが生じなくなるのです。ゆっくりと安らかに。
Okay, now here, I want to point out how some of Zeke's logic isn't quite as anti-natalist as he might think, at least if we're talking about the work of theorist Lee Edelman. See, Zeke isn't just trying to prevent the suffering of his own people, he's also trying to make a better future for the non-extinct Marleyans. And this is kind of problematic. In his book, No Future, Edelman lays out his argument on the destructive tendencies of the figure of the child. For example, think about how often we hear stories about people sacrificing their own lives so that their children can have better lives, or arguing that their political or environmental agenda is so important because it'll help future generations. But for Edelman, the child is an end that's endlessly postponed, meaning that so much of human existence is aimed at some magical, infinitely deferred future. And in the name of future children, we go to war, we persecute people. Basically, all the gross and messed up stuff the world has ever done was framed as doing it for the future generations. And that's the problem with Zeke's plan. When he talks about the pain of Titans, he means both Eldians and non-Eldians. So erasing the future of Eldian children creates a brighter future for non-Eldian children. And to that end, he's concocted a very not chill plan to sterilize people against their will. But as we're about to see, not everyone is immediately down with all of this.
いや、待て、安らかなもんかよ。ユミルの民が消滅するまで人口が減り続けたら、国の晩年は老いぼれしか生き残らなくなるんだぞ。そんな状態でどう国を守る？他の国が放っておくとでも。
I mean, that sounds relatively fair to me. Now, there are similar responses to anti-natalism which argue that life probably won't be so great for the last folks remaining. But I don't know, Tom Hanks had a decent time when he was alone with that volleyball on the island. Also, did Tom Hanks f that volleyball?
But baby, it's you.
But making love to a round inanimate object while no one is watching aside, philosophers like Benatar and theorists like Edelman argue that the suffering of the last humans would be a small price to pay for the unknown amount of suffering they would be avoiding by doing a massive vasectomy to the world's collective semen tube. Wait, is the volleyball Chet Hayes' mom? So then it's like white ball summer, white ball. Oh, okay. Let's wrap this up before I go too far down the Hanks rabbit hole. Let's play the last clip.
そのような尊いお考えがあったと感動いたしました。それはよかった。嬉しいです。あなたにも分かっていただけて。
Well, at least one person was convinced by the plan, so there's that. Unless he's lying, unless he has a plan, because in this show you think you understand one plan, but then someone is like, they have like a covert plan inside the plan, so he could be up to some right there. So let's get the second half of the season and see, because I'm putting my money on he's scamming the scammers. Okay? But what do you guys think? Is there an anti-natalist streak to the show, or is it just getting into real creepy fascist territory? Let us know in the comments, and please let us know if there are any other shows or movies you think could use a philosophical reaction. As always, thanks to our patrons for all your support. Hit that subscribe button like you're signing a contract pledging your life to the voluntary human extinction movement, and don't forget to ring that bell. As always, thanks for watching. Later. Yelena does have a much chiller vibe. Like, I would find her more convincing than Zeke. So, okay.
Yeah, she would be a better spokesperson for the No More Babies movement.
Definitely. I think that's the main thing. You need a good spokesperson.